Good morning. This is Simpe Jonas from the Center for Risk Analysis. For much of the year, our advice to clients has been that the ANC lacks reformers as well as the influential leaders needed to bring about such changes to the macroeconomic environment. So then, what other avenues will bring about the much needed structural reforms?
The first thing is the great question on South Africa, Jörg, is when is the reform moment? What anticipating it accurately. I think, and Thomas has said it now, that the prospects for reform to be engineered from within the present ANC are limited. There are potential avenues to that. Reform will have to occur from without, and it can happen through two sets of effects. One is that desperate in the face of defeat, the ANC in government is willing to, in effect, surrender policy sovereignty to external financing institutions and allow those institutions to force unpopular reforms onto the government. Essentially, the budget speech is dictated from abroad. That is a prospect, and it's an opportunity to seize and to use financing in order to force reform. The second avenue to reform now is the political defeat of the ANC itself and the growth of a new movement in its stead that, given sentiment in South Africa, has the prospect of being centre-right. And by centre-right, I really mean Mandela and Mbeki. And if anyone tells me they weren't centre-right, I'll say to you, budget surplus. Now, where in the world do you find that? That's arch fiscal conservatism. So I think that there are prospects for reform, and I think they're very much closer, Jörg, than anyone realizes. I think the effects of the lockdown and the pandemic has squeezed into 3 months trends that would otherwise have taken 3 or 4 years to play out. So arguably, South Africa now is far closer to its reformist horizon than I think many firms are able to anticipate. And I think there's a terrible problem in thinking about South Africa. And I think it's bred in the media, and it's a problem that is encountered most often amongst people who rely on political and economic analyses out of groups of firms that simply do not have the information or understanding of history or ideology to do a professional job of analysis. And for example, anyone who suggested that Nasrec was a great reform window simply did not know what they were talking about. They didn't have access to the facts. And that false confidence creates disproportionate disappointment. Firms that we've briefed since Nasrec, we've told, look, we don't think it's going to be the great reformist window, but neither is it the end of the world. South Africa's growth is going to underperform emerging markets by a significant proportion. We'll run into the energy crisis, and we'll run into the political crisis. Collectively, those bring us to the moment of reform and realignment. And that moment can create a set of circumstances that will make South Africa a far more competitive investment destination. And if I was a major, if I sat on the board of a global corporation with a serious about a global footprint, a serious Western firm competing with challenges from the East, I would have absolutely no problem in saying that South Africa is a good part of the world to place oneself in a holding pattern in, to take advantage of the potential upsides. And more than that, because so many people are down on South Africa now, but the political realignment is potentially so close, you might pick up interests and assets here, particularly given the currency weakness as well, at bargain basement prices. And I could make a compelling case, put it in a couple of paragraphs, about why firms with long-term horizons, professional strategic thinking, that aren't swayed by these B-grade analysts. I don't think that there should be any great fear or consideration, particularly given that South Africa would be such a small part of the market, but it sits at the southern tip of the continent that just from a sort of consumer trends perspective over 30 or 40 years could become hugely influential. So I don't see the problem. I don't see a crisis that requires fleeing. I don't see that at all. And if you spent much time in our offices when we still had them, my analysts, the best of them, could work in Europe or America if they chose to. They hear the mood in the office is upbeat. It's not because everything is fantastic and we think it's going to go great. It's because we understand what is really happening. We can see the opportunities and we know where the change and inflection point is going to be. I'll stop in a minute for you, Thomas and Evelyn. If I read in the archives, so to speak to my senior and more experienced colleagues who did this kind of work in the 1970s and 80s and in the early 1990s, the position is very similar. They could see the potential upsides. They could see the reform moment. There was a whole lot of misguided fear-mongering being tossed around that completely swayed perceptions of many groups and investors, ultimately all false. I think South Africa stands at a similar window if you've got a long-term horizon and you can withstand some short to medium-term setbacks. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be here.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to gain access to our reports and exclusive client briefings, you can now gain access to our 1-month free trial. For more information, follow the link in the description box below.